All right, best guys to see in person. This was inspired by you seeing Jokić and Wembanyama in back-to-back nights. And before we went to break, you talked about you can go see Jokić in person and just watch Jokić the entire time. And it's like going to a concert where you're like, I'm just going to watch, going to like Van Halen in the early 80s. You're like, I'm just going to watch Eddie Van Halen and nobody else. I'm just going to stare at him for 3 hours and just see what he does and try to learn some stuff. Jokić is the guy for that now. And there's only been a couple guys in the history of the league that I think hit that level where you're like, I'm not going to watch anybody else who's on the court except for this guy. And you're still going to have like an incredible time. So we're not doing a draft. We're just going to do our list. I made a list I did 1 to 10, actually. I told you to do 1 to 5, but you can add a couple if you want, but
right. Mid-season form.
Yeah. I changed the segment without telling you. But I'm happy to stick with 5. So we're just going to alternate our number 1, go down number 2, all that. But your number 1 is Jokić?
Yeah, it's Jokić. Can you let me do this here? And I won't do this as long as everybody else. I promise. I know how much you love when I go a little long. But I'm just going to tell you.
Is this a Russillo log?
Yeah.
I'm just going to sit here. I got my Michael Jordan Dream Team cup.
Is that near mint condition?
I have the whole set. I was going to break out some Christian Laettner today, but I think I'm going to wait until a later episode when we really need the energy. But I got my Michael Jordan. I got some water. You go. You do your thing.
I'm a little surprised. Like, it's almost like Christian Laettner's mom walked so Taylor Swift could run. Because like, if you are mad about Taylor Swift cutaways, if you were around for Laettner's mom during the tournament, you would have just blown your brains out. Like you wouldn't have been able to handle it if the Taylor Swift ISOs get you this upset. All right, so Jokić against the Wizards, who, by the way, I think may have used all their timeouts in the first half. I mean, it was atrocious. And it was kind of funny, too, because Jokić is like, these guys suck. I'm just going to do stuff. Okay.
Well,
like
that's what Bird and Magic used to be like that, too, in the 80s. Right? These guys suck. I'm going to just try some shit.
It's exactly how it felt. Like they were helpless. All right, so.
Was this the game where he threw the 80-foot alley-oop?
Yeah, and I was at that basket that he threw it at.
Yeah.
And he caught it he rebounded one hand, never touched the ball with his other hand, and just threw it. And it was perfect. I mean, it was absolutely perfect.
80 feet in stride, Gordon gets a layup, and it was like a touch pass.
So here are the early possessions, and I promise you I'm not going to spend I'll make this as quick as I can. All right, so he comes down. It's a pin down screen to the left side to free somebody up to get the ball. Then he goes block to come up, gets a post touch in the paint, double team, throws it out to Michael Porter Jr. for a corner 3. All right. Then he runs a 2-man game with Michael Porter Jr. He screens, then re-screens kind of, but it's more of him just getting in the way. And then he rolls off of that, gets it, and then hits the floater. Then he has a brush screen handoff. Then he gets it back in the same possession, kicks it out to a 3. Then he decides, like, you know what? They're going to throw it back at me. He reposts because he has Coulibaly against him, and he looks around almost like, are you seriously not going to double and let Coulibaly defend me now with a paint touch? All right, fuck it. Hook shot goes in. He gets another post touch in the paint. KCP kicks it out, wide open 3 on a jump pass where he jumps in the air, and anybody else, you're like, oh my God, that's going to be a turnover. And he knew already where everybody was. It was fine. The next play, he's pointing to the others saying, I don't want the ball. So he sets a back screen and then another kind of pin down. And then Michael Porter Jr. gets it. But Jokić decides to like still move down, trailing the play. So the defender having to deal with Michael Porter Jr. can't totally commit to Michael Porter Jr. because he's worried about Jokic's movement on the left side. And then Michael Porter Jr. hits the floater. Next possession, back screen from Murray, layup, never even touches the basketball. Then there's the one-handed pass that he throws to Aaron Gordon like a quarterback. Then on an inbounds play, he's not inbounding. He's not the target for the inbound pass. He sets a screen. The Wizards are so stupid, they don't even know what's going on. But he already knows what's happening. And he looks to be like, I'm just going to kind of get in the way here. Wide open 3, Michael Porter Jr., he hits it. That's the first 6 minutes of the game, Bill. That's my point. He leads the league in touches. 100 touches per game. That's how many times he touches a basketball in a game. All right. He's
but 20th. Each touch is like a split second.
Okay. Great point. Because he's, if you look at the top touch guys, right? Sabonis is second in the NBA. Luka is third. Luka's third with 92 touches per game. Jokić, the 100 touches, leads the league. His average time he has the ball on those touches is 2.8 seconds. Luka's at 5.6 seconds.
Ooh,
so here's
I would guess
Jokić.
higher.
Right. Here's Jokić with 100 touches a game, but he's 20th in usage. He screens, he re-screens, he doesn't even want to shoot, it feels like, half the night. I can't get over how impressive it is that he's that talented. His hands are perfect. His feet are just amazing. Like, I know he's not the most athletic guy. Even watching him scramble on defense, it actually looks worse than it actually is because he's like working to be in position and show and recover. But the way he just moves, he already looks like he's out of breath and it's bad, but he's actually in better position than he gets credit for. For 6 minutes, all he wanted to do was get everybody involved. And it's the best way to play basketball.
That's why we ride with Jokić. I mean, I agree with everything you just said. I would add this. He solves stuff during the games while also kind of seeming like he's trying to fuck with the other team, especially if it's an inferior team, which I think makes them during garbage time so much fun. I don't see how this gets worse as the season goes along, whatever is happening with him. Because it feels like they'll go on a little run, they'll get ready. And I'm just watching this, hoping they play the Lakers in round 1 and the Clippers in round 2 or round 3, so we get to have them come into LA and go get to see him a bunch of times. Because I had an absolute blast going to the Nuggets-Lakers games last year. He's my favorite player to watch in the league, and it's not even really close. So we have the same number 1. I also want to mention, when you see him in person, you realize how he kind of busts his ass on some of those fast breaks. Like, he's not like, I'm taking this play off, I'm taking that play off. Like, if there's a turnover or transition, he runs and he fills the lane, even though he's like kind of lumbering around with that weird Jokić stride, but he really does like put the time in trying to fill lanes, being a trailer.
He wants to get the ball up the court. So even when he clears it out of the rebound or somebody throws him the first outlet, he'll throw up another pass. So like, if he decided, hey, I'm bringing the ball up every single time, I'm stopping and I'm going to set up the offense. But it just makes me wonder, like, even though Denver, is the 4 seed, it's also bunched up. So there's not like this huge, massive difference between, man, you guys really like the 4 seed here. I mean, if you look at where they were at going into last night, they were into tonight, 38-19. Last year, they were 39-18. Yeah. Their offensive numbers have dipped as far as where they rank, 12th this year, 5th last year, but it's the same output. It's just the entire league is up. And the defense this year is actually the same number, but it's ranked higher because, again, the offense has gone up. But it makes everybody want to play. And you can't really stop paying attention at any point because he might throw you the ball. And if you cut, you're going to be rewarded. If you screen for him, he might screen for you, and he'll set 3 screens. I mean, he's 4th in screen assist in the NBA. And when you look at that number in comparison to who else is in those top 10, it's not guys winning an MVP. So when I look at like him or a Steph, and it kind of gets back to like my frustration with certain teams and what am I going to let the regular season trick me into believing? I go, is the solution, is the common thread here, with all those Warriors teams or whatever, that like, hey, it's constant movement. It's being tougher to guard. It's continuing to cut and screen for guys because there's some special players in this league that can get buckets whenever they want. But then I go, but that guy will never set a screen. Like once he's out of the play, that's it. My job is done. Jokić never looks at the game that way.
Yeah, it's almost more like hockey. He also does things during the game that I've never seen before. Like he had a play today when he had Gordon on the left and it was a fast break. And he faked off like he was going to pass to Gordon and then did a 2-step like he was going to do a floater. And he started doing the floater. And then at the last second, he actually did throw to Gordon. I was like, what just happened? Was that a travel? Was that legal? How did he do that?
Do you know how many times I think it's going to be an up and down and it never is?
It never is.
It never, because it's never going to be. You're right, because he knows where the pass is going. But the starting point, like watching him play defense live, he came out and blitzed on the pick and roll, stayed with the ball handler, then retreated to the corner, but then there was somebody else there. So he had to like run across the paint to close off the guy in the opposite baseline. And he threw his hands up in the air and just started like waving them around. And it just, the only thing I could think of would be like, you're going out to dinner with a buddy who'd been golfing all day and you'd go, hey, are you drunk? And he'd be like, no, I haven't had a drink. You're like, oh, okay, well, you're acting, you're not drunk? You're like, no, I just got to dinner. I didn't drink at golf today. Like, what are you talking about? Like the way if you were to just watch, if you had never watched Jokić before, now granted, in the offensive stuff, you figure it out. But I also realized like why this guy went in the second round. Because there's times where he moves around, you're like, what is he doing? Like, what's going on there? And you're like, actually, he's in position.
Yeah, there's a method to the madness.
He visually doesn't look as special as all these other superior athletes that we have in the league.
Well, if he wins the MVP and the title this year, and I assume he'll be first team All-NBA, which would give him 4. So last 6 years, he would have 4 first, 2 second all-team All-NBAs, 2 MVPs, 2 finals, 2 titles, which is putting him on pace to go into that final group, the pantheon. Like
what's your top pyramid again?
He's level 5 is the last level, and he's starting to sniff it a little bit. It's like, wait, what's going on up there?
How many
There's
people
another
are on,
door?
How many people are on level 5 right now?
15. 16. 15 or 16. I can't remember.
Who was like
maybe.
15 and 16?
Durant, I've had him. He was in level 5, and then we sent him back to level 4, and I don't know where he's going to end up. He's right there. He's in a door. He gets to he has a cot in level 5, but he has his apartments in level 4. But he gets to go up and see everybody in level 5 every once in a while.
Which is rare, I imagine.
I told you I didn't want to shoot my wad with 17 segment ideas because we're going to be together every Sunday. But there's a best players of the last 10 years argument that Jokić is getting closer. We'll do it another time. All right. I'll go second with my second favorite guy to see in person. It's still Curry. I still like, if he's in town, I want to go. And if I don't go, I'm like, oh man, I probably should have gone to see Curry. I don't know how many more years he has left at this level. You know, it's like one of those. It's like, oh, pick a favorite band. Oh, they're in town again. I saw them last year. I don't know. But then you don't go and you're like, oh man, I probably should have gone. What if they break up? I don't know how many more Curry years are left, but he's another one where you can just watch him the entire game, watch how he moves, watch how his teammates try to do those little handoff, thingies with them, and just how he uses his body, in traffic. I never get old. So never gets old for me. So I have him second. Who'd you have second?
Steph.
Okay. We don't need to talk about Steph. I feel like we've spent 10,000 hours. So here's where it gets interesting. You just saw this guy in person. Is Wemby your number 3?
Not yet. No.
Okay. Who's your number 3?
It's Ant.
Oh, okay. Make the case.
Look, I know he sucked the other night against Milwaukee. But the missed dunk he had in the lane was probably one of my favorite highlights of the week. I just, I hate to say it reminds me of somebody, but he does move like him a little. Let's just not even say his name. And it's not even fair to Ant or the other guy that we're talking about. There's just some stuff and his passing on these deep drives is getting better and better. Like, it's not out of nowhere. You could see some glimpses. And I do think sometimes these drive passes, we give him almost too much credit for, because it's like, hey, the guys are all stationed where they're supposed to be stationed. But there's times where he's getting a pass out to a corner or to the break where I'm like, how did he even get that out there? So I think just the physical moments with him, just the top 1% athleticism with him, and to tie it into that it's been one of the best teams in the league this year, that I would have Ant 3.
I know you don't want to mention him. We're not trying to put this on him. Kobe reminded everybody the most of Jordan. And in some ways was doing like a really great Jordan impersonation, even like mimicking how he shot. It was like,
well, how about the way he talked? Like the cadence. Yeah. That was almost like weird, but
well, it was like when we did Creed in Philly and for rewatchables, we did the live thing. And Creed has that scene when Donnie is watching the second Balboa Creed fight, and he gets up in front of the TV and he starts mimicking all of Creed's punches and movements in it. And you see the TV behind him, and he's doing exactly. That's like the level Kobe was at with Jordan. Like, he tried to mirror so many things that Jordan did. So he would be number 1. Wade always, I thought, had some MJ in him before his knees started to go, like the second Miami year. But if you watch especially him in 2009 when he had nobody. But he was, I thought, the closest from all the stuff he did to Jordan. Because, he didn't really shoot threes. He just tried to get to the rim. He had that pull-up game. And then Edwards, there is moments where you get a little deja MJ. Like, plus he carries himself like the fucking alpha. Like, I'm the best looking person in this building. I'm the best athlete in this building. I am completely unafraid of the other team. Don't trash talk me. I'll get upset. Like, there's just some elements.
Yeah. And then, after they had beaten the Clippers, and, you can take all these top teams, like, hey, what about that outcome? What about that outcome? Right.
Yeah.
'Cause I thought that win for them was huge. And, the way the Clippers had just been beating on everybody for 2 straight months.
Yeah.
But then the weird part about like calling out the Clippers and them being old. And then when Kawhi was asked about it, Kawhi almost like downplayed it. And I don't know if that's just Kawhi who doesn't want to talk to anybody, or if there was any element of it being like, I'll let Ant mess with us. Like, I'll let that guy mess with us because he's him. And I don't mean that in the meme way. And then the other funny thing from All-Star Weekend was everyone they cannot wait to show off their fits, and he's in a hoodie. Like, I don't even care.
Right. I actually was hoping he'd be the guy who's like, I'm going to be the one guy that cares about the All-Star game, but he actually went the other way. He's like, I care the least. Actually, you think Luka and Jokic care the least? It's actually me. I care the least. Okay. My number 3 is Wemby. Just because it's new. There's a new car smell to it. But
did you go on Friday?
I didn't go on Friday, and I regret it because I had some parent stuff. But I am excited to see him do his thing. And especially it feels like he's starting to put together the off the ball stuff. I'm not really involved in this play. Oh, wait, I am. Oh, you can see the other team is starting to really think about him profoundly when they're within like 25 feet of the basket. He's starting all the stuff that was frustrating about him in summer league in the beginning of the year, where it's like, dude, you're 7'5". Just kind of traffic cop the rim a little bit more. Like, you're not a small forward. Like, stop with that. You're 7'5". It feels like he's figured out that part. And then there's so much in his game that's just terrible right now. Like his pull-up jumpers are awful. And I think he might have the lowest pull-up jumper field goal percentage in the league. But then there's some fluid, like spin moves and stuff in traffic, and he's dunking and you don't even realize he had a chance to dunk and he's not even jumping. And I just haven't seen enough of it yet. I wish I liked watching his team more, but I want to see him in person a couple more times this season.
Yeah, in person, it's a different experience.
Yeah, so what'd you see? Tell us.
Well, you could see there were different times when guys in the Lakers, like Austin Reeves, get caught on a screen once with him, and it was just like, what? Like, this is, are you kidding me? I'm supposed to get through this?
Can you give me a broom?
And then Reeves thought he had him on the left side for a layup, and I love that he tried, but it was like Wemby almost, as he was going up, was like, are you seriously going to try to do this? Okay, whatever.
Yeah. I'm
taking this. He stripped LeBron in transition, which I couldn't believe. You're like, what? There's just the rest of it's almost more fun watching the moments of everybody else that's on the court and the opponent.
Right, like, reacting to the experience of playing against Wemby. Yeah.
Are you serious? And then, in the second half, guys just aborting, and like they'll beat their man off the dribble. And they go, whatever. Like, I'm just going to curl. I'm going to curl back around. And when you add up all the blocks and the steals and all that, those numbers, and he went crazy in the first few minutes. And it was funny kind of just sitting in the stands, because for so many people, it's the first time they've ever seen him. And then like other people that aren't super into the NBA, they think they're watching an alien. And you hear like somebody asking the boyfriend, being like, how old is this guy? What's his deal? Like, he's this French kid. And then they're like, how old is he? And somebody else would be like, I think he's like 25. And you're like, oh, wow, he's going to be good. And somebody else is like, no, he's 20.
Yeah. No, he's going to be the best player of his generation.
So he lit it up. I mean, I think he had 11 points in like his first rotation there of like 6 minutes or something, because he was hitting threes on top of everything else. But there's usually like every few possessions, there's a moment where he's the only guy in the world who can do the stuff that he's doing. So him being fourth, I don't have a problem with. I think because the new part of it and wondering what it'll be like that night, I can't imagine being a Spurs season ticket. The number of things that you've seen through this course of the season with him is just stuff you've never seen before. So, yeah.
So you have him fourth.
You know what? I'll put him down fourth. I mean, I'm not
Okay.
trying to mirror you here, but
I had him
it
third.
was. Look, I landed in LA and had been gone for 8 days, and in a million, like, I'm not going to a basketball game that night, and instead it was Wemby, and I was like, I'm in.
Right. You know, one thing that I've been impressed by watching him a little more, where I was really having trouble watching them, but lately they've been more fun to watch. He's less clumsy is not the wrong word, but you know, Porzingis has 3 times a game where you're convinced his season's about to be over.
Yeah.
Like he jumps, he lands in traffic, or he hits knees with somebody, or he has like a stumble, and you're like, oh no, Wemby doesn't have as many of those as I thought he would. I thought it would be a little clumsier, but he's really coordinated. I don't know how to explain it. He's just, he seems like it's almost like a ballet dancer. He knows kind of where to land and where to go, and he avoids trouble more than I thought with that stuff. Because usually the tall guys, they're just a constant, you know, some sort of dumb, stupid knocking knees into somebody's hip, or stepping on a foot or whatever. He doesn't really have them. My number 4 is still Giannis. I still have Giannis in my top 4 for going to see in person, just because I love how hard he plays. And he is one of those that in person feels different than on TV. In person, you get the size, you get the crazy, like his crazy length with his arms. And he does have those moments where you're like, fucking hey, how does anybody stay in front of this guy? So I'd still enjoy seeing him, and I would have him 4th.
Yeah, basically everything we just said about Wemby, like, it's not like Giannis isn't. It's pretty close to the same experience.
Yeah.
Like sitting there for the in-season tournament games and seeing it live and having those seats, it's the same thing. Where you're like, I can't believe the guy picks up his dribble from there and is at the rim. And there's just moments where you're helpless. Like the opponent, you're absolutely helpless against them, because
and when he's really trying, you're always like, man, how are they going to beat this guy when he's trying like this? It's always like surprising. All right, who do you have for number 5?
Probably Ben Simmons, because it's such a treat.
Just to watch somebody dribble the ball up the court.
No, because he's playing. So you're like,
and then
hey, he's back.
run under the basket.
I've set my notifications to next off season for the Ben Simmons is back summer. I'll probably go with, you know what? I'm just gonna go with it. I wrote it down. I think Zion in person, even though the time we saw him in person, it was terrible.
You can't quit Zion.
I can't.
He had a great block down the stretch today.
Yeah, they lost though.
They lost.
I can't figure that team out. They have the guys back and then they lose.
Well, they didn't have a point guard tonight. They didn't have McCollum, and then Alvarado got suspended. So it was like Herb Jones and Ingram and Zion bringing the ball up.
Yeah, but they get smoked by Miami. At one point, I think late in the second quarter, they were 8% from 3 and Miami was 64%. Like every time I want to get excited about them. But I'll just tell you, as far as watching it, Point Zion is still one of my favorite things to watch in the league. So there.
Okay. I have SGA number 5. I really had an absolute ball watching him in person earlier this season against the Clippers, and I want to see him again. I hope, you know, it's fun because both LA teams are in play for playoff series, and I really hope OKC is going to be one of them. But his herky-jerky stuff that he does, I'm not tired of it yet. So I had Durant 6 and I had Edwards 7. So I gave SGA the nod.
You'd rather watch SGA than Ant?
Yeah. Listen, top 7 is solid. It's not like I kicked him.
He's
to
the better
curb.
player, which no sane person would debate, but I don't know about that.
I like watching how cool and calm and efficient he is, how he runs that team that's just this young team that should have no business being on pace to have like 58 wins. And then in crunch time, he takes over everything. But I have a little bit of a personal connection because I watched him as a rookie. So when I see him now, I'm just like, I love basketball and I talk about it and used to write about it for a living. And I did not see any sign that this was going to happen. So when I'm watching, I'm like, how did I not know this? And I'm going back almost to that 2018 season Like, man, I just thought this guy was going to be like a really good defender and knock down some open threes. How did I miss this? But I think everybody feels that way. Although Doc's now taking credit for seeing it the whole time, which he did on my podcast. And I do think Doc tried to talk to him out of throwing him in that trade. I do think that's legitimate.
Twitter doesn't like Doc. So
yeah,
I think even if Doc had a
hits.
point to make, it just was going to turn into the same thing like when LeBron says, but LeBron has some bad ones on his resume as far as pointing. I don't think Doc
He's
is
the league leader
world.
in the clubhouse. Yeah,
so,
Doc's up there, though.
We didn't pick Luka. Are we so conditioned to how absurd he is that we're taking it for granted and we're not? You didn't even put him in your top 7.
I had him 8.
Okay.
It's the mono ball that you and I are aligned on that. The heliocentric. I don't like watching. I thought about putting Kyrie over him from the standpoint of when you see Kyrie in person and he actually cares, it's always amazing. Like you just see things like, that nobody else in the league can do that. Oh, he just went into the lane and just did a running lefty layup that he lofted off the shot clock and it went in. But I don't like when one guy has the ball all the time. I felt that way with Harden. I felt that way with Westbrook. I feel that way with Luka. I know it's working. I know he's unbelievable, but it's just not for me. It's not my kind of basketball.
Where is Luka on your MVP ballot?
Let me look. Because I actually did it. I had a little MVP list. And I'm top 5.
So is that SGA 2 behind Jokić?
I have Jokić, SGA, Luka, Giannis, and Tatum, a distant 5th. And that people are trying to get some Tatum MVP stuff going. It's like, come on. I love the Celtics. I would never in a million years make the case for him.
Yeah, the Tatum push
it's a
has been
ridiculous
weird
argument.
The last couple, I don't know. It's not, is it a week or something? And he said he was the best. That's fine. Like that's what you're supposed to do. I think the weird part for Tatum is that, I went on Cowherd's show and he was kind of knocking a little bit. I was like, look, if you want him to be one of the top 4 guys, I'll tell you that you're right. But where he's at is pretty good. And if the Celtics find a way to pull it out this summer, then, the shows that next morning will say like, hey, is he actually the best player in the world? There's no way a full season from Jokić I could ever fathom voting for Tatum over Jokić.
There's no.
I don't even think I'd vote for Tatum over Doncic.
If you're doing that as a segment on your show, then that means it was a boring week.